that we do in life. When you promote freedom of choice, we take a risk that some people might make bad choices. But that's what freedom is all about, making choices, whether they're economic choices or medical choices or personal lifestyle choices. The consequence should be borne by those individuals that make those choices. So if we are to have a free society, it has to be a responsible society. And if people make bad choices, they can't come and say, well, I messed up, I have to go to the government, and the government's to use their force to make my neighbor pay for my bad choices. In medicine, it's the same way. Every individual won't make the best choice in the world. But think of the differences when the bureaucrats and the government and the lobbyists make the choices, and when they make the choices for the wrong reasons, or if they make a bad choice, even with good intention, it covers all of us. This is why it is so dangerous. It's much better to believe that individuals have this right to make this choice, and then we go there and go our own way. If there are to be regulations or something going on under the Constitution, there would be some choices and some regulation maybe at the local level. But you know, what this invites, and sometimes this is because we're talking about making good choices for beneficial of good health. But there are some choices that can be made by individuals. If you legalize freedom of choice, they really might make bad choices. They might decide to smoke something they shouldn't smoke. They might drink too much. And yet, freedom of choice means that they have that right to do that. Right now, there's an argument in our country that some people who are very sick and have cancer or AIDS and aren't able to eat well receive some benefit from smoking marijuana. I'm not an expert on that. I have no absolute medical knowledge on that. What I'm convinced of, though, is that individual has the right to make his own decision on whether it helps him or not. Not only does that individual have the right to make that decision, under the law, he should have that right to make a decision. Today, we live in an age where the federal government has a war on drugs, which is an atrocious war on drugs, because the war on drugs is many folds more dangerous than the drugs themselves and what they do to us. But then when it gets out of hands, the state tries to override the federal government, and they'll come, and some states have actually legalized a very modest use of marijuana. And yet the federal government will come in and override the state laws, which they should have no authority to do. They'll override the state laws and literally arrest individuals who have never committed a violent crime using medical marijuana and getting some relief, and they've arrested individuals like that and put them in prison. And then they do that in the name of compassionate conservatism. It makes no sense to me. But freedom of choice in all our personal activity is something I believe in, and whether it's personal social choices or whether it's economic choices. And yet today we have lost those choices because we have been careless. We may fight the issue, and all of you in this room understand the medical issue so well and why the choice issue is so crucial and how the government creates our problems. But this is the case in so many other areas. And yet we have gotten to the point we are practically giving up on the Constitution that was given us. The Constitution, which has provided us so much freedom and so much prosperity, has been literally undermined. Not with this administration or the last administration, but over the last 100 years. We have allowed our governments just to take over our lives because we have lost confidence that freedom really works. Freedom of choice is much better. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than when we rely on the federal government making these choices. And what has this led to? It has led to a near bankruptcy, if not a literal bankruptcy of this country. Because we have now overtaxed our people to run these programs and to get involved in a medical care system that is unaffordable. They talk about the Social Security system being bankrupt, but when you look at Medicare and Medicaid, they're even in worse shape. So there's no way that this can continue. There's $70 trillion worth of obligation of entitlement programs over the next 30 years. And the young people know it, and they realize it, and they don't like what they're inheriting. They don't like all this debt. There's a $9.1 trillion national debt. Just to pay the interest on our national debt, it takes $1.4 billion a day to pay the interest. Then we wonder why our people are getting poorer. And we don't even have enough money to pay the interest. We have to go to China to borrow the money to pay the interest on our national debt. And, you know, we worried at one time in the 50s, we worried about, and in the 60s, and that's the reason why we were in Vietnam, because we were worried that the whole world would be engulfed by communism. We were worried that Southeast Asia would go communist. Well, finally we learned a lesson, finally got out of Vietnam, but Southeast Asia has gone sort of capitalistic. Not good capitalism, but at least more so than they used to be. And now it turns out that China has become our banker, and we can't do anything. We can't pay for the war or pay for our health care system here at home without borrowing all that money. This is all going to come to an end. This is why the principle of liberty applied to medical care is a general principle. And application of our Constitution is so vital. There has been a total rejection of the rule of law in Washington, not only by the Congress, but by the executive branch of government and by the judicial branch of government. And certainly in the executive branch, it's the agencies that have abused us so severely. And they do this by, first off, writing a lot of regulations. Where did they get the authority to write regulation? Only Congress. Only Congress is supposed to write law. And yet, we as a people are just so complacent saying, thousands of pages in the Federal Register every year, and it's all law of the land. Nobody can even read them, let alone figure them out. So it's a real job to figure out when you might be violating one of these regulations, what the FDA is saying, the FTC is saying, and then the government comes in and you have to prove yourself innocent. I mean, it's a real mess. And this is the reason why over the years I have taken such a serious approach to obeying the oath of office, to obey the Constitution. Now, taking a serious oath like the oath serious like that means that sometimes I had to vote by myself. Like in a 4-year period, 150 times I had to vote by myself trying to make this point. So this is a problem that we do face, and it's not going to go away easily. We're overextended financially. One of the main reasons why I ran for Congress in the early years, in the 1970s, was the obvious breakdown of the monetary system, which was back then was called the Bretton Woods Agreement. But we were paying for guns and butter. We were paying for the Vietnam War, and we were also paying for an expansion of the entitlement system. That's when Medicaid came in. So the 70s were a very bad decade with a new term called stagflation, inflation going up and the economy weakening. Today I noticed that the consumer price index for last month alone was up 3.2%. This is a big, big jump. It's the biggest it's been since 1971. At the same time, the economy is slowing up. So we're moving back into stagflation. And when the government admits there's inflation, then it must really be bad, because they always underestimate what's really going on, because last year they said there was an inflation rate of 2%, and yet the true cost of living has gone up tremendously, so the people are losing control. They're losing their standard of living. There's no way that the average person, the middle class, is able to keep up. And this is why it's difficult. When the government gets involved in medical care, and they involve themselves in destroying the money, and that literally means printing a lot of money to pay the bills that they can't get enough taxes for, and they can't get enough borrowing, so they print the money, the value of the money goes down, and prices go up. But the worst part about that is prices don't go up evenly. Prices go up more in some areas than the other. So prices might even go down for a cell phone or a computer or a television. But prices are going to go up in the industries where the government's most involved in. So where's most of the price inflation? Prices go up in education. They went up in housing for a long time until the bubble burst, because the government's involved in housing. And energy, they're very much involved in energy. Prices of energy has gone up. And where else? In medical care, skyrocketing. Where's the quality of care goes down?